3, 2, 1, let's go! Hi everybody and welcome to another exciting edition of Boring JavaScript. I'm your host, the Virtual White, aka Mike Smith, and today we're going to be talking about the Object.assign method. If you ever wanted to copy the contents of one object to another, well, Object.assign is what you need to do. In fact, it will even merge the contents of a bunch of objects into an object. So is this everything you ever wanted in copying objects? Well, yes, but no, there is a slight caveat in there. So you want to see how it works? Well, let's get started. Now, Object.assign copies the enumerable own objects of an object into a target object. So the assign command, which is located right here on line 7, basically takes two arguments. The first argument is the target object. In this case, I've got it as a blank, empty object. The second argument is the object we want to copy. So what Object.assign will do is copy my animals into this blank object. The result of that operation will be returned, and so I'm assigning it to your animals here. So what I should have here of the console.log, I should be able to have my animals containing the animals I have here, which is cat, dog, horse, and cow, and your animals, which should be an exact copy of cat, dog, horse, cow, my animals object. And that's all there really is to it. So again, Object.assign takes the source object, which is the second argument, and copies it into the first argument, which is in this case a blank object. You see how it works? Let's flip back over to our code and let's type in node assign. And there we go. It's exactly what happened. My animals is my cat, dog, horse, and cow, and your animals is also now the cat, dog, horse, and cow. So as you can see, Object.assign copied the contents of my animals over into your animals. So I had a blank object as the target object. Let's go back to the code. Here, right here, I had a blank object as the target object. Well, what happens if I had an object that was already populated? Well, let's take a look at that next. So what happens if your target object has properties in it? Well, let's find out. Here I have my animals, which is the same cat, dog, horse, cow, but now I have populated your animals with coyote, roadrunner, dolphin, whale, and lizard. And in my Object.assign here, I'm saying I want to have my source as my animals, the target as your animals, and to return everything into all animals. And then we'll print all three of those out there. So what will happen? Well, what happens is that if the target, in this case your animals, has properties already inside of it, what JavaScript will do is it will take the properties of the source and just throw them into your animals as if it was adding it to your animals. So for example, right now I know I have coyote, roadrunner, dolphin, whale, and lizard. It will add in cow, horse, cat, and dog. So what I should expect here is that your animals end up being, there are 5 here, the coyote, roadrunner, dolphin, whale, and lizard, plus cat, dog, horse, and cow for a total of 9 different properties. And something else too that I didn't explain on the previous one there is that this is the target object, which means it gets changed. So not only does it get returned into all animals, but your animals itself will get changed. So what I should expect here is that console.log my animals will still have cat, dog, horse, and cow. Your animals will be the larger one now with coyote, roadrunner, dolphin, whale, lizard, cat, dog, horse, and cow. All animals will just be a pointer to your animals for coyote, roadrunner, dolphin, whale, lizard, cat, dog, horse, and cow. So again, my animals will get copied into your animals on a property by property basis, and the properties inside your animals will still be there, but the target will change. You want to see how that works? Well, let's take a look. Let's go back over to node and let's type in node merge. Sure enough, that's what happened. Well, here's my animals. Again, it hasn't changed, cat, dog, horse, cow. The second one, we had console.log was on your animals, and you can see now your animals was coyote, roadrunner, dolphin, whale, lizard. It has now been added, cat, dog, horse, and cow. All animals is just basically a pointer to your animals. coyote, roadrunner, dolphin, whale, lizard, cat, dog, horse, and cow. So again, what will happen here is that the target will get merged property by property into the target object. So what happens if we have a similar name? So what happens if the source has a target target key that's exactly the same as in the let me rephrase that. If the source has a key that is exactly the same as in the target, what will happen? Well, let's take a look at that next. So what happens if the source object and the target object have the same keys? Well, let's take a quick look at that. Here is my animals, which been using the same thing here, cat, dog, horse, cow. Here is your animals, which now has coyote and cat. So notice that I have a cat entry here called Fluffy in my animals and a cat entry here called Mr. Jingles inside your animals. And I'm going to be doing the object.assign with the source as my animals and the target as your animals. And notice I'm not saying constant all animals equals object.assign here. I'm taking that part out. And again, the reason I'm doing that is that the target object always gets mutated, always gets changed. So I know that once this operation completes, then your animals is going to be different. So there's no need for me to assign it to a variable. The only time you want to assign it to a variable is that if you use your target as a blank object, which I did in the very first video there. So I'm going to output my animals. I'm going to output your animals. Let's see what happens. Let's go over to node and let's type in node same. Well, here's my animals, the cat, dog, horse, cow. Here's your animals, the coyote, cat, dog, horse, and cow. The cat's name is Fluffy, which means that if there are two keys that are exactly the same between the source and the target, the source one will overwrite the one inside the target. Because remember, your animals, the initial cat one was called Mr. Jingles, while in my animals, the cat was Fluffy. As you can see here, your animals now contains Fluffy as the cat's name. This means that again, whenever there are two matching keys between the source and the target, the source one overwrites the one on the target. Now, earlier I said at the very beginning of the intro, I said you can merge a bunch of objects together. Now let's take a look to see how you can take a bunch of different objects and merge them into one singular object. Now, Object.assign is great for copying one object into another, but what if you had a bunch of different objects? Well, Object.assign can take more than one argument to where the second argument on to however many you want to put in there all get merged one at a time into the target object. Let's take a look to see how that works. Here I have my animals, the same cat, dog, horse, and cow, but now I have one that has 6 different objects here. Coyote, which has just a single coyote object, roadrunner, dolphin object, a whale object, a lizard object, and a beluga object. So what I'm going to do here now is I've taken the object.assign and I've made it much larger. And what happens is that this is still, the first argument is still the target object, but arguments 2 through the rest of the list there are objects that get merged into my animals. What order do they get merged into? One at a time, starting at the very beginning. Coyote will get merged first, then roadrunner, then dolphin, then whale, then lizard, then beluga. So when all of this is done, I should have my cat, dog, horse, cow, coyote, roadrunner, dolphin, whale, and lizard, and whale again, all inside my animals once everything is done here, because all of these will be copied one at a time into my animals. Now, earlier, did I not say just then that we're going to have cat, dog, horse, cow, coyote, roadrunner, dolphin, whale, lizard, and whale again? Well, that was actually wrong. Aha, because think about it. Remember the last video, what will happen if we had 2 different keys within these objects that matched? What happens? Well, again, remember the source one overwrites the target. Well, now they're both in sources, so what's going to happen? Well, because these are taken one at a time, coyote, roadrunner, dolphin, whale, lizard, and beluga, what I would expect is that when we get to this whale, it will copy whale Moby Dick into my animals. Then when we get to this beluga, and this has its own whale here, whale is already going to be inside the target object, which is my animals, which means that beluga's whale is going to overwrite the target, which is what we proved with the last video. And our whale should be beluga. So we should only have one whale, and it should be named beluga. You want to find out? Let's find out. So let's go into node and let's type in node multi. So before I just had cat, dog, horse, and cow. Now I have cat, dog, horse, cow, coyote, roadrunner, dolphin, whale, and lizard. And notice that whale is beluga because again, everything was taken in order. So the first whale was put inside there, and that was great. When we got to beluga, which is the second whale, it overwrote the whale that was already in the target, which was in the target from a previous whale object. So this is how you can use the Object.assign to merge multiple objects into a single object, and it will even still take care of the matching keys if there happens to be any. Now, in my intro, I mentioned that there is a little caveat to all of this, and that's when you're trying to copy certain data types of your objects into the other objects. Let's take a look at that next. So Object.assign copies all of your source object over to your target object and everybody's happy, right? Yes, but there are certain situations where you could get caught in copying data over, making changes to the data, and the changes are reflected in places where you don't think they should be reflected. Now let's cover that particular situation now. Here I have my original my animals, and I still got the same cat, dog, horse, but horse is now an object. And this object has two traits, two properties, name and trait. The value within horse is called structured data. It's an object, and an object is a structured data. It's part of the data types within JavaScript, as opposed to cat and dog, which are strings. Strings are called primitive data types. Now, when Object.assign does the copying, if you have a primitive data type, which is like string, Boolean, number, big int, symbol, I think undefined, I can't quite remember off the top of my head all of them, it will just make a complete physical copy, which means if we have variable number 1 here, property number 1, and it copies the property number 2, it will just make a physical copy. So if property number 1 changes, property number 2 stays the same. No problem. It works like a champ. But for structured data types like objects, it copies the reference of the object. Now, what do I mean by reference? Let's say we have the object right here. When we create the object, we've created inside this variable here. It's part of a property inside this variable. And inside the object of this variable, what gets saved is not the physical copy of the object like a primitive. What gets saved is a reference or pointer to this particular object. So when Object.assign copies this particular object down to this other object, the properties that are within here, what gets copied is the actual reference, not a physical copy of this. This isn't, another copy of this is not made. It copies the reference. So number 1 here, variable number 1, has a property that references this object. Variable number 2 here has a property that also references this object. They're both referencing the same object. So what that means, if you change something inside of variable 1 here that changes something inside the object, variable number 2 is going to see it too. And let's see exactly how that happens. So I have my animals variable. I also have your animals variable, which have two primitive strings in it, Willie E and Moby Dick there. And I'm copying my animals to your animals. You know how all this works. So before the name change occurs, I should expect your animals to be coyote and whale, cat, dog, and horse. Again, horse having an object now as its property and not a string. I'm going to go to my animals, and it's very important to understand this. I'm going to my animals and changing the horse's name to Wildfire. And so this is going to change the horse's name inside my animals to Wildfire. And then we're going to console.log your animals. You want to see what happens? Let's take a look at node. And let's type in node change. So before the name change, your horse's name was Mr. Ed. After the name change, your horse's name was Wildfire. Now again, why did that happen? Because the fact of the matter is we changed the horse's name on my animals. We didn't change the horse's name on your animals, but your animal's horse's name got changed. And again, that is all because when we're copying structured data, we're copying the references. We're not copying the physical object itself. We're copying references to the object. So if we were to again change that property inside variable number 1, my animals, and it changes the horse's name, it's going to get picked up within your animals because it references the same object. It was the reference that got copied, not the physical object. So that's one of the big gotchas that you need to take a look at when you're using Object.assign. You need to take a look at what your objects are. If they're just full of primitive values, wonderful. Object.assign works great. But if they are not, if there's some structured data inside there, then you're going to need to do what we call a deep copy. And I'm not going to go into deep copy here. Just do a Google search on JavaScript deep copy and you'll get plenty of routines to be able to do that for you. And that will literally copy the objects from one to the other, including the objects themselves. So that's the caveat I want you to be aware of here, is if you do an Object.assign and your object has structured data in it, like functions and like objects, you're copying references. So you better make sure that if you change it in the first or the source object, you better be okay with the fact that it's also going to change in the target object. And that's all there is for Object.assign. I hope you enjoyed our video. Hope I didn't bore you to death. Please visit all of our videos at www.boringjavascript.com. Subscribe to our YouTube channel or check out everything that we do at www.thevirtualoid.com. Thanks again for watching and we'll see you later.